What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode on my channel. As always, I'm Jay, and today, guys, I'm going to be giving you my spoiler review of Spiral, the first spin-off of the Saw series. That's right, Jigsaw is still technically considered part of the Saw series, but I wouldn't know because I stopped watching at Saw number 4, son, but that's besides the point. Anyway, guys, before I jump into my spoiler review, you've been warned because I am going to be delving into some plot twists and details, so if you haven't seen the film yet, but you know you want to, go watch it and then come back and we can talk all things about this film. But if that doesn't bug you, or if you've already seen the film, let's talk Spiral, starring Chris Rock and Sam Jackson. While investigating the grisly murder of a local police officer, veteran detective Zeke Banks discovers that another Jigsaw copycat has surfaced. As the bodies pile up, Banks discovers a web of corruption in his own precinct when suddenly his estranged father goes missing. Banks races against time to stop the killings, enlisting the help of his rookie partner and police chief. But will he be able to stop the killer's deadly game, or will he become the next victim? So, as I said in the intro, my relationship with the Saw films was, severed after the fourth film. First film was a pleasant surprise. It was amazing. It had a great ensemble cast of even people up and coming, too, who would later go into some such great shows as Lost and everything. But then you had actors such as Cary Elwes and Danny Glover and the like who, you didn't see in this type of film before. At least I didn't, and it worked really well. And that twist ending, you will never, ever, ever top that twist ending. Plus, what we were seeing on the screen, just the panic, the craziness, the manicness, the extreme kind of stylized nature and visuals of the film were so great. Tobin Bell was amazing as Jigsaw. I cannot say enough about his performance as the Jigsaw killer, at least in every film. I thought he was so fantastic. His voice is so chilling. And that Billy doll, oh my god, the doll. But like I said, I stopped at the fourth one because the series, after the major success and surprise hit that was the first one, it's almost as if it became a kind of parody unto itself. And that's what happens a lot with these horror series, Friday the 13th. Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween even, and so on and so forth. They become a parody of themselves. The first one really wasn't as grotesquely violent and kind of, it was a more kind of suspenseful action thriller rather than a horror, I would say, but it eventually became a more torture porn gore fest as they went on, which that's fine, but it's just, it kind of felt like it diminished in quality with every sequel. And the thing about it is that, having not seen those other ones, because of that, I really had kind of a low bar set for this. And then on top of that, when I found out that the guy who directed Saws 2, 3, and 4, I believe it was coming back to direct this one, I really had even less faith in the project just because, sometimes the director can really make or break a film, and the tone and everything is really determined on how he can handle and work through the script, the acting of different actors, and kind of how he can handle the production, as it were. As everything's playing out. But having heard that Chris Rock was going to be in it and Sam Jackson, that kind of enlisting of star power kind of reminded me of the first one where you had all these stars and everything. Because another thing that happened is in the subsequent sequels for the Saw films, you really didn't get a lot of standout stars coming into it. So it really felt kind of like a more straight to DVD or VHS and even borderline sci-fi channel kind of production, and I didn't like that. I just felt like that Saw movies deserved better. So going into the film, I definitely had lower expectations, to say the least. And I was pleasantly surprised. The film actually wasn't terrible. It was actually pretty solid in my opinion, but there are some things that definitely weren't perfect in the film. As far as the things I did like, Chris Rock, standout performance, had great dialogue, did the character justice. I felt like there was a lot of moments where I feel like I could really feel him as a character. His whole thing is that he's an honest cop in a dirty precinct, and he's had issues in the past with kind of having to watch his back, and he's kind of like the black sheep of the entire precinct. Then you've got Samuel L. Jackson in the film as well, And the thing is that, they did use him sparingly, which I felt like they might, I figured, hey, he probably had a weekend where he was going to be able to film and shoot stuff, which probably was the case. But they'd used him a lot more than I thought. They didn't utilize him the way that I thought that they might have, as far as, I had preconceived notions about, how they were going to go with the direction of the story. To be perfectly honest, I thought that they were going to make him the spiral killer as far as this goes. But turns out they didn't do that, although it would have been a lot more interesting if they had, for me personally. But what they ended up doing instead was making the rookie partner of, Chris Rock's Banks the actual spiral killer. His father was actually killed by Banks's old partner who he ratted out on. So as a result of that, he grows up, kind of infiltrates the precinct, and then also targets and singles out different cops who are known to have had some corruption or being dirty, and just singles them out and just puts them in these traps and everything. Next thing, the traps, though sparingly, I really enjoyed what they did. First trap right out the gate, the tongue trap, oh god, man, oh. And then in the middle, they had one where this guy is like in a kind of a finger trap type of thing, where he has to have all of his fingers be pulled off, where he's going to be electrocuted and killed in a kind of a pool or whatever that's kind of filling and almost hitting a live wire. I think the worst trap was later on in the film, when the police chief, she actually either has to sever her spinal cord or drown basically and die from hot wax being poured over her face, essentially. That was the worst one. That one made me cringe a little, because I'm like, oh, I could feel just like the razor's edge on the back of my neck watching that scene. When it all boils down to it, the premise and everything really works, because this spiral Jigsaw copycat, he's not really a copycat, he's actually targeting cops. So it walks a very fine line of ethical and moral justice, especially with today's climate. I found it very refreshing. And they weren't very heavy-handed with that kind of throwing it in your face about X, Y, and Z things. They just presented bad cops getting their comeuppance. And the thing is that because he's killing people that are kind of all enemies of Chris Rock, you think maybe he might be connected to it, or that his father's connected to it. The way it ends is that ultimately Chris Rock confronts the killer. He tries to save his father, then he gets into a scuffle, but because he gets into a scuffle, he doesn't realize that his father's hooked up to this machine that's making him look like he's about to kill people. And in the moments leading up to that, the spiral killer actually called in a threat or about some crazy guy with a gun. So a SWAT team comes to this warehouse, and then he gets gunned down, and then at that same moment, the spiral killer makes his great escape. And in true Saw fashion, the doors close, and that's where the end of the film comes, and jumps into a weird, random rap mix of the Saw theme. So there you go. So those are the things I liked. What I didn't like was that there were varying degrees of quality in this film. I'm going to tell you what I mean. First and foremost, like I said, the standout performance was Chris Rock, but there was some bad ADR work, and there were some bad takes that were used. I don't know what the hell was happening. Like, 1 second he'd be on point, his acting was very believable. Then in some points, it's like they picked the shittiest take out of him doing something, and I just felt like that was very off-putting. A lot of things visually, sometimes they didn't really match up well. Visually, I feel like the Saw film should be like the first one. There should be a very highly stylized, kind of, scratchy, kind of grainy, gritty look to it. And at times there were, but then at times, aside from that, there really weren't. And it really turned me off. It's like, dude, can we get back to the roots of the Saw films? Can we get back to that first original style? And there were a lot of things where it was like, it looked like it was just a straight-to-DVD movie that Sam Jackson does on like a 2-week shoot or some shit like that. It feels like there should have been more deaths and more traps in this film, but they ran out of time, or along with the other issues that happened that I have a problem with, what happened was maybe the pandemic kind of cut the production short. But overall, I think that, all those things notwithstanding, even though it didn't stick the landing, it is still a solid film and definitely worth watching if you're a Saw fan. For me, I put this film slightly above Saw 3. And the thing is that it's because it did have kind of a fresh perspective. It played it safe in a lot of different ways. It gave me just enough to kind of be interested. Plus, if you follow this thread into sequels and kind of, again, make those adjustments and actually work and everything like that, then I would say I'm definitely on board for another couple films, especially centering around Chris Rock's Zeke Banks, just to see where it goes and if he's eventually able to catch this killer, or maybe if he turns into a partner of the killer as he, pretends to be at the end of the film. But as far as this goes, think it's solid. Definitely recommend going to watch it in the theaters, especially, despite all the flaws that I mentioned before. And yeah, definitely go and check it out if you haven't already. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on Spiral, the Saw spin-off film. But guys, let me know what you thought of the film if you watched it. Did you love it? Did you hate it? And guys, if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you are subbed, make sure you hit that bell button. That way you never miss a moment of my content. But until next time, guys, that's all the time that I have for today. So take care, and bye.